Nathan, I'm curious, what kind of challenges are you seeing amongst the studios, the businesses that Loyalsnap is working with today? I mean, I know even our tech partners still end up in very deep business conversations with their clients a lot. So I feel like you also get to be very in tune with what the common challenges are. What are you really hearing mostly today?
Most of the challenges that we hear from our clients is that their sales process and really connecting and engaging with new clients and building relationships with existing clients is super manual. And so they're running out of time and they're running out of energy to be able to connect with all of them and try to move them through that process. Another common challenge could be that they need something that brings all of their staff together. When we think of our enterprise accounts who have a sales manager, a studio manager, an owner that's not really present at the studio, they need something where they can manage everyone in one place. And then the owner or the studio manager is able to go in and see what activities are being taken and making sure that everything is being followed up on.
Amazing. And so I'm sure you see, you work with some very large brands. So to keep growing and maintain their size, they must be doing something right. So how are those successful studios, whether they're large or small, how are they managing these, challenges of manual sales processes and all of that?
I think the first thing that they do that helps them is they define their goals and they make sure that that's very clear for what they are going to be automating through our system. So before we even get started, we like to sit down. We like to make sure that their goal is very clear, whether that's increasing retention or it's converting new leads, whatever it might be. We have that goal identified, and then they are curating that sales process into actionable to-do items or text message automations or email automations that are then able to be taken from our Loyalsnap team and spread out, if you will, across all of the studios. We train all of the studios to make sure that they know how this is helping them in their sales process. So not only is it that their goals are defined, but that they have this almost like a brand toolkit in a way that is helping them have consistency across all locations.
I love that. I love that. My biggest takeaways there were defined goals, so important. And also, especially if you're an owner operator and you're doing so many things, so easy to try to run past and just start doing.
For sure.
So love that, and love the brand toolkit and consistency. Beautiful. That's awesome. On the flip side, what are the biggest mistakes you're seeing studios make? Is it just not doing those things? Is it other things too?
Absolutely. I think sometimes people try to get too much out at once. And so if we think of, let's say, SMS marketing, for example, sometimes what I see is a studio owner might try to automate a text message that's introducing themselves, where they're from, asking 5 questions, and then giving 3 or 4 different links at the end of it to try to convert that person. So they're trying to do too much at one time, and that's just not going to work.
So would you say, what is a best practice if we're looking at one, sales or marketing, text or email that you're sending to a client? Is it that each one should only have one objective and one call to action?
Yes, absolutely. Every text message that's being sent should have a few things. So best practices would include calling someone by their first name, introducing yourself and where you're from at the beginning of every new conversation. It doesn't mean that you have to do that with every reply, right? They know who they're talking to at that point. But if it's been a few days since you've reached out to that person, you should always reintroduce yourself and where you're from. And then open-ended question is always going to be the best way to end a text message. So keeping it kind of short and simple, but asking a question that's going to get them to respond, because what you want is you want to have a conversation. You don't want to have a one-way, here's my word vomit and everything that you need to know about the studio.
Love that. So tactical and actionable for people. And again, I didn't tell you I was going to dig into this, but now I'm just so curious. Any then suggestions on cadence? Because you alluded to, okay, so we're trying to keep each communication succinct and focused on one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then also you said about reintroducing yourself every few days. Love that. So what is like a good cadence? And I assume it's different given the objective, if you're looking to try to retain someone or trying to convert someone.
Mm-hmm.
But do you have a good go-to cadence for either of those?
Absolutely. And one thing that I'll also mention is it also depends on your audience and
Mm.
who your ideal client is going to be. If you're looking at an ideal client for maybe a yoga studio or meditation, you're probably not going to want to try a sales approach that is reaching out to those people every single day. They're just going to get annoyed and they're going to opt out of your SMS marketing. So you really want to first take into consideration not just your goal and your objective, but also who your audience is. And if you are your own ideal client, then think of yourself 2 years ago. What would you have responded to at that time? And how often would too often be for somebody to reach out to you and try to get you to convert? Typically, what we see for most locations is something between 2 to 3 business days between outreaches tends to be kind of a sweet spot. So if you reach out to a lead, let's say today, they come through immediately, you're giving them that first outreach, give them maybe a day or so and then reach back out, and then maybe another day or two and then reach back out, but not overwhelming them with an email, a phone call, a text every single day for a week, because people start to feel like it's almost a slimy business practice.
Awesome. Okay, so we're talking a bit about, how to structure these messages, and the cadence to give them. But a big thing that I hear, and I don't know if you hear the same thing, is there is sometimes this fear of relying on tech with client communication. I think studio owners fear that it loses some of the personalization, some of the authenticity. So I guess let's start with, to you, why do you think leveraging tech, leveraging something like Loyalsnap is important to the studio owners rather than just picking up their cell phone and firing off texts as they think about it, or picking up the phone as they think about it?
Absolutely. I think the first thing that we consider as to why technology is important, because we all know that an in-person conversation is going to top all technology. It's going to top every single type of automation or email or text message you can send out, right? But the reality is that that just doesn't happen all the time. People are not constantly thinking about who's coming in and out of class and that they need to connect with those individuals immediately after they come out of class. Or maybe you have 5 new students coming into one class. How are you going to connect with all 5 of them after class? So the first thing that I think about as to why technology is so important is that it automates and it streamlines. Let me backtrack that. It automates and streamlines your sales and marketing process. And in addition to that, it's going to help you not just save time, because you don't have people pulling these manual reports and lists or tracking down people on Google Sheets like I used to do before technology was huge. You also save money because you aren't spending so much staff time on these manual tasks that they can actually focus on building those meaningful relationships with these clients that they're getting in front of them. A few other key points that I think are important to keep in mind as to why this technology can help you in your sales process is that it also improves engagement and loyalty. When we talk about these manual tasks and we talk about people not having a clear process that's in front of them to complete them, the technology, at the end of the day, is going to be working on your behalf. It's going to send out that process. It's going to send out your cadence of emails and text messages. It's going to be following up with clients so that if you do have a gap in staffing, if you have something happen at the studio where maybe your salesperson's out for a week, there's something going on. So it's always going to help increase that engagement and build the loyalty with your clients. And then ultimately, it builds efficiency and effectiveness, which helps you optimize your sales process for the future. What works today is not necessarily what's going to work tomorrow or in a month from now. And we found out a lot of that during COVID when, things changed almost, I felt like monthly or weekly at a time. So what we can see is when you have your sales process automated through a platform, you're able to look at open rates, response rates, click-through rates, and then you can continue to come back and see, okay, what's working, what's not working, and how can I change those tactics?
I love that. I mean, one thing I'll just note, I think it's so clear the way that you talk about using tech, that you have been an owner operator in a yoga studio. You're not coming at this only and purely from a tech perspective. And understand the importance and the power of those in-person conversations, and are layering that tech in again to continue to adjust. And where I wrote down is, does this help you iterate better than just trying to manually send these things? And that's exactly what you started to touch on. So true. Getting those open and those click rates, that's great. And allowing people to go back and adjust the cadence or the messaging, I'm sure, to try to increase those. Amazing. That's great. Very helpful. Actually, on that, do you get open and click rates for text message communication as well?
We don't. That's
Okay.
something that doesn't come through quite yet. Tech will catch up sooner or later, I'm sure to that.
Sure.
So for the time being, we just tell people to consider the responses. The idea of a text message is that you get that conversation and people are responding to it. So if you notice that your lead text message that's going out immediately after they come through the platform is not getting people to respond to it, it's time to optimize it.
Got it. Okay. Do we have a sense of what a good email open and click rate is, and then what a good text reply rate is?
Sure. So email open and click through rates in the industry, the open rate should be around 21% and a click through rate should be around 2.7%. I will say that that's, in my opinion, pretty low. So I would want that to be much higher. Among a lot of our clients, we see typically around a 45 to 50% open rate and about a 3.5 to 4.5% click-through rate. When it comes to text messages and what those response replies should be, it should be around 40 to 50% of people responding to it.
Awesome. Super helpful. I know I get asked that question, like, what benchmark should I aim for? A lot. So that's very helpful. Okay. So we talked a little bit about the fear of sometimes leaning on tech, worrying that it doesn't come off authentically or personally. If you're working to systemize the cadence and you're working to systemize the messaging, how do you make it feel still personable and unique? I mean, you said about using first names. I'm sure that helps. Any other tips to do that?
Absolutely. I like to consider how you would normally talk to a client. And sometimes what I tell our businesses that we're working with or a brand that we're working with is get your best couple of salespeople to give you their sales pitch and how they are walking people through the sales process in person, and use some of the language that they're using and plug that into your automations, plug that into your text messages. And also on the flip side of that, your best marketing content is going to come from your ideal client. So if you have a handful of members that you can trust that are super loyal to your business, get them in a focus group and have them explain what their challenges are, what they love about the studio, what maybe they don't love about the studio, because that type of feedback is really important as well. And use some of the things that they're saying to sprinkle into your marketing and text communications, because then you are being personable and you are reaching out specifically to the person that you want to connect with.
Love that. I love the idea of doing a focus group with your clients. And I mean, so Loyalsnap gives you stock or, option language in a lot of these communications, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So, but you're saying it's there to help. Don't only use it, use your brand voice.
Right. We give you the starting point because we see that that's always really important. A lot of times people don't know where to start. They don't know what to write. Maybe they're not a copywriter, right? There's a lot of things that come into play here. So we give you a starting point and say, at the very minimum, you could get started with what we've given you. However, we do recommend that you change out photos to be your studios, your members, your managers. You go in and you edit language so that it's more towards your ideal client, also towards your demographics and your region. I would say y'all because I'm in Texas, and I would not say you guys. So there's something that is to be said about just changing out little tweaks and little pieces of messaging like that.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I love that. Even like you said, that ever so slight thing of adding in y'all, then your clients know they're not being hit with something. Well, it's still automated, right? But it's personalized. Okay, awesome. Are there any other just really effective, great marketing or sales things that you're seeing some of your studios do lately that others could learn from?
Absolutely. I think of let's talk about the conversion process. That seems to be a pretty big topic for most locations, right? We want to make sure that the people who are coming in are actually staying long-term members with us. So what I see work the most is when they have content going out to someone throughout their intro offer time period that is working to educate the client, connect with them, and feed them relevant content. So relevant content should be valuable and it should be engaging for the audience. And remember, we want to make sure it's engaging for our ideal client audience, not just what the studio down the street is doing. So we want to make sure that you're feeding them this information that has this emotional tie to why they would want to join the studio. And then they operate based on behavior. So let's say I'm doing a 2-week unlimited intro offer for my yoga studio. Somebody signs up, they start taking some classes. Maybe it's been 5 days since their last class and I haven't seen them. Getting something out to them that says, hey, notice that we haven't seen you since your last class. Can I help you get booked for your next one? Or how was your most recent experience? And just connecting with that person to try to help move them through this intro offer. Another way that I see people segment based on behavior is as they're getting close to the end of that intro offer, saying, okay, this client here took at least 5 visits in the last 10 days. Let me route them to my unlimited membership because that's going to be the best option for them and the most cost efficient. Somebody who's taken 2 to 4 classes, let me move them over to maybe an 8-time per month membership or a 4-time per month membership if you have one. If not, then maybe it's a class package of some sort. But getting people to the right option rather than thinking of a one-size-fits-all approach.
Love that. Love that. We talk so often, about prescriptive selling. And, like you're saying, not trying this one size fits all. Of course, you have your ideal membership that you try to get everyone to, but also you're trying to meet the clients where they are. Um, Amazing. That's very helpful. Thank you. Um, what what else did we miss here, Nathan? What do you want to share with studios?
I think the biggest thing that I can throw out there is that if you are using tech, and even if you're not, and you're looking to get started of using tech to help you streamline your sales process, remember that what you set today is not what you're going to be doing in 3 months or in a year from now. You should consistently be going back and testing and optimizing and adjusting your content for what's happening in the world at the moment and what's happening in your community at the moment. what I see as a biggest downfall to some brands is that they just don't keep going back. And so somebody hasn't adjusted or changed content in a year and it's no longer relevant. And they're starting to see that things aren't working anymore. And they're starting to get frustrated that it's not working. So just remember that every month you should really be going back and looking at what are these open rates, these click-through rates? What is my response rate to text message look like? And then also, what are my current promotions and offers that I'm running? And does that match what I'm putting in my content to make sure that you're consistently updating and changing things and seeing how they work?
Totally. I love it. Okay, so we're going back and looking monthly. I don't know if there's an answer to this, but then so if things aren't working and you're going back and you're looking at your different sequences that you have, and it's just not converting or it's not getting engagement and people aren't retaining. I mean, I guess the different things we could look at changing are the cadence, the messaging, and you brought up the offer, the actual call to action. Are those the big three different things that you would say that you would evaluate adjusting one? And then I guess maybe
Absolutely.
channel, changing out an email for a text or a text for an email.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I think that the one thing that you'll know is that the data will tell you. So if your open rate is below 40%, like I was speaking about earlier, then try a different subject line. Your subject line should be intriguing. It shouldn't be giving everything away in the subject line. So if people aren't opening it, it means that you're not doing a good job of intriguing them to open the email. If your click-through rate is below the 2.7%, then your call to action either isn't clear or your offer isn't strong enough. So the first thing that I might adjust might be the button text to see if that drives more people to click. If that doesn't drive more people to click, then I'm going to change my offer and see if that drives more people to click. So you only really want to change one thing at a time because then you won't know what works if you change too many things at one time. But look at the data, and the data will tell you what types of adjustments you need to make. And if you have made all of those adjustments, you've tried different offers, you've tried different open or subject lines, you've tried different call to actions, then maybe it is time to change the cadence, or maybe it's time to change your approach overall. What does that sales approach need to look like moving forward?
Hmm. So tactical, Nathan. Love it. Thank you. Okay. So we're looking at subject line first in terms of open rate. Then we're looking at if we're not getting the click, is the CTA clear? Is the offer intriguing? And then if both of those things are still not delivering results, we're really zooming out and looking at the overall strategy, cadence, positioning. So,
Yes,
okay.
absolutely. Because your ideal client might shift a little bit. And if you're doing a 2 week unlimited intro offer and you've been doing that for the last 5 years, maybe that's not really appealing to your client anymore. So maybe you need to try a 1 week, or you need to try a 3 week or a 5 class intro offer, whatever it might be. But as you grow and as your studio continues to move on in its cycle, it's going to change, and you're going to want to keep things fresh so that people don't get stale.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nathan. This has been so great. Have such great tactical takeaways for studio owners. Is there anything that we haven't touched on, or any last thing that you want to leave the BFS community with?
I don't think so. I think we touched on a lot.
Cool. Thank you so much.